In the quiet, respectable home of the Evans family, there were certain things that were sacred, not because of their monetary value, but because of their weight in memory. For 19-year-old Sarah, however, the weight of her own desires had recently become far heavier than the weight of her family's history. She was a university student, bright and ambitious, but she was caught in the powerful current of a social circle that was far wealthier than her own, and she was beginning to drown in the pressure to keep up. The catalyst for her downfall was a last-minute, 3-day music festival. Her friends had all bought their expensive tickets, their group chat buzzing with plans for outfits and travel. Sarah's heart ached with the familiar, bitter sting of being left out. She asked her mother, a single mom who worked as a high school principal, for the money. The answer was kind, but firm. "I'm sorry, honey," Mrs. Evans had said. "It's just not possible right now. We have to be sensible." But Sarah didn't feel sensible. She felt desperate. And desperation, as it so often does, gave birth to a terrible idea. In the formal dining room, on the polished mahogany sideboard, sat a pair of antique silver candlesticks. They weren't just decorations. They were a legacy, a gift from Sarah's great-grandmother, a tangible link to a past Sarah had only heard about in stories. They were the one truly valuable thing they owned. "It's not really stealing," she told herself, the lie taking root in her mind. "It's just a loan. I'll get them back with the money from my summer job. Mom will never even know they were gone." The next afternoon, while her mother was at work, she wrapped the heavy silver candlesticks in a towel, placed them in her backpack, and walked to a downtown pawn shop. The man behind the counter offered her $300 in cash. It was more than enough for the ticket. As she walked out, the crisp bills in her pocket felt like a victory, but the sudden lightness of her backpack felt like a hole in her own soul. She pushed the guilt down and went to the festival. For 3 days, she lived a lie, surrounded by music, crowds, and the temporary bliss of fitting in. She posted pictures, laughed with her friends, and for a little while, she almost forgot what she had done. She returned home on Sunday evening, exhausted and happy, to find the house quiet. Her mother was having a special dinner guest the following week and had decided to do a deep clean of the dining room. As Sarah walked past, she saw her mother with a silver polishing kit, her brow furrowed in confusion. "That's strange," Mrs. Evans said, more to herself than to Sarah. "I could have sworn I left the candlesticks in this box." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Maybe you put them somewhere else?" she offered, her voice sounding unnaturally high. "Perhaps," her mother replied, though the seed of a terrible suspicion had been planted. Later that night, long after Sarah had gone to bed, Mrs. Evans, unable to sleep, decided to take out the trash from her daughter's room. As she lifted the bag from the small bin beside Sarah's desk, a small, crinkled piece of paper fell out and fluttered to the floor. She picked it up. It was a receipt, a carbon copy from Downtown Pawn and Loan, dated 3 days prior. And on the single damning line item, 2 words were printed: "Antique silver candlesticks, Mrs." Evans sank down onto the edge of her daughter's bed, the small piece of paper trembling in her hand. The breath left her body in a silent, devastated gasp. It wasn't about the money. It was about the cold, calculated nature of the betrayal. Her daughter had taken a piece of their family's history, a piece of her great-grandmother's soul, and had sold it for a party. She didn't storm into Sarah's room. She didn't scream. She just sat there in the darkness, the proof of her daughter's crime in her hand, her heart breaking with a cold, quiet rage. She heard the sound of Sarah's key in the front door, returning home from her triumphant weekend. And she waited. Sarah walked into the house, flushed with the afterglow of her perfect weekend, dropping her bags in the hallway. "Mom, I'm home," she called out cheerfully. The festival was amazing. Her mother appeared at the top of the stairs. Her face was a pale, unreadable mask. "I'm glad you had fun, Sarah," she said, her voice devoid of its usual warmth. "Because it's the last fun you'll be having for a very long time." The dining room, now, the tone, cold and formal, sent a chill down Sarah's spine. She followed her mother into the dining room. Mrs. Evans walked over to the sideboard and pointed to the empty, velvet-lined box where the candlesticks were supposed to be. "How much did you get for your great-grandmother's candlesticks, Sarah?" she asked, her voice quiet but shaking with a barely controlled fury. Then, she held up the pawn ticket. The color drained from Sarah's face. The lie, her carefully constructed world of deceit, crumbled into dust. She sank into a dining chair, her body trembling. I was going to buy them back, she whispered, the words sounding pathetic even to her own ears. I swear. You don't swear. Her mother cut her off, her voice sharp as a razor. Not in this house. Not after what you've done. This isn't about money. This is about history, about family, about trust. You didn't just sell 2 pieces of silver. You sold a piece of our family's soul for a weekend of music. You took something irreplaceable and treated it like it was disposable. Like we are disposable. Sarah began to sob, the full weight of her transgression crashing down on her. I have been a patient mother, Mrs. Evans continued, her principal's voice now fully emerged. But I have also been a disciplinarian, and this act of profound disrespect and dishonesty requires a profound consequence, a lesson that will be inscribed into your memory. She walked to the back of the hall closet and retrieved a long, flat wooden paddle, an object of discipline that hadn't been seen in their house for years. You have committed 3 grave wrongs, she said, her voice steady and resolute. You stole from your own family. You lied through your deception, and you betrayed the memory of your great-grandmother. You will receive a consequence for each. She pointed to the sturdy dining chair Sarah was sitting in. You will bend over the back of that chair. Humiliation, hot and absolute, washed over Sarah. But she knew she had earned this. This was the price of her ticket. With tears streaming down her face, she stood and did as she was told, bracing herself against the back of the chair. The first strike of the paddle was a loud, sharp crack that echoed through the formal dining room. A bolt of pure, stinging fire shot through her, and she cried out. That, her mother's voice said, firm and clear, is for the theft. Crack. The second blow was even harder, a powerful, emphatic lesson. That is for the lie. Crack. The third and final strike was a definitive, humbling impact that broke through her selfish pride and left her sobbing. Her mother placed the paddle on the sideboard, right next to the empty box. Your consequence is not over, she said, her voice now quiet. Again, it has just begun. The terms were laid out with the cold precision of a school administrator. First, you will get the candlesticks back. You have a part-time job. You will now get a second one. Every single penny you earn from both jobs will go into an envelope until you have enough money to walk back into that pawn shop and buy back what you sold. Your social life is canceled. Your weekends are for working. Second, you will write a letter, not to me, to your great-grandmother, whose memory you dishonored. You will explain what you did and why, and you will read it aloud to me. The next 2 months were the hardest of Sarah's life. Her days were a grueling cycle of university classes, followed by her shift at a bookstore, followed by her weekend job washing dishes at a greasy diner. She saw her friends' posts about parties and fun, and felt a world away. She was exhausted, her hands were raw, and every dollar she earned felt like a painful step on a long road to redemption. Finally, the day came. She walked into the pawn shop, her hands trembling, and placed the wad of hard-earned cash on the counter. Minutes later, she walked out, the heavy, familiar weight of the silver candlesticks in her bag. That evening, she and her mother sat in the dining room. Sarah, with a shaking voice, read her letter aloud, a tearful confession and a promise to honor her family's history. When she was done, she took the candlesticks out, and together, she and her mother polished them until they gleamed. She placed them back in their rightful spot on the sideboard. She looked at her mother, her eyes full of a remorse that was deep and real. I'm so sorry, Mom. Her mother looked at her, and for the first time in 2 months, a small, sad smile touched her lips. I know you are, Sarah. Now, you are. Sarah looked at the beautiful silver heirlooms, and she finally understood. She had learned that the weight of the silver in her hands was nothing compared to the weight of the trust she was now so carefully, and so gratefully, trying to rebuild.